For the last two podcast episodes, I had the pleasure to speak to two crystal growers, one whose career has been shaped by expanding the company and legacy of his father, the other who had been working predominantly in industry but has created a new glow-in-the-dark single crystal that holds great potential for jewelry. I'm fascinated by the technology of crystal growth and have been an avid reader of the articles that have been appearing in the media about the subject. Even though lab-grown gemstones have been around for over a century, with rubies to be the first to be made commercially available in the early 20th century, the technology to grow lab-grown diamonds took around 50 years longer to develop, and in contrast to the approach taken with ruby, for which the growth process was made publicly available in 1902, the method for growing diamonds were patented and tightly controlled. This restricted access significantly delayed the emergence of lab-grown diamonds in the jewelry market, which only became widespread much more recently, a change the industry has felt and has been responding to, resulting in lab-grown diamonds being a highly contested subject. Covering these and other developments in the industry must be a thrilling and challenging task. And today I have the pleasure to interview someone who has been doing so for over 30 years and has won several editorial awards for his writing as well. I am excited to welcome Rob Bates, news director for JCK. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Rob, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
So my title is News Director of JCK and jckonline.com. I put together the news for the daily newsletter. I co-host the twice monthly podcast, The Jewelry District. I write for the magazine when it comes out. So that's basically it. My job, I would say, involves being very aware of what's going on in the industry and trying to give people the best information we can on it. I can tell you a little bit about my background. My grandfather was actually a diamond dealer on 47th Street, but he died long before I got into it. But I always wanted to be a writer, and when I got out of college, I was looking for a writing job, and Martin Rappaport was looking for an editor, and I told him, I came from a diamond family and I know the industry and it was a little bit of BS there, but I guess Rappaport pitied me, and then I worked for him for a while, and then I worked for National Jeweler, and it's been, I think, over 25 years at JCK, which is it's hard to believe sometimes. So it's been about over 30 years, actually close to 35 years covering the industry. And one of the things I enjoy about it, and I don't know if this is true about other industries, is that, I mean, it really is so, there's just so much to it, and it overlaps with so much. It overlaps with fashion, it overlaps with international politics, overlaps with marketing. It overlaps with all these kind of different parts of the world, and you get very interesting glimpses of different aspects of the world, and obviously people from different cultures. And I started covering mostly diamonds, but now, at least for the newsletter, I certainly touch upon watches and gemstones occasionally, and definitely retail. So it's basically trying to get as good a sense of the industry as we can and put out as much worthwhile information every day as we can.
I want to ask you before we talk more about your roles. You've sort of touched
Yeah.
upon what attracts you to jewelry. Maybe I can ask you if there are any stories of why you realize, yeah, this is the subject that I want to investigate. This is why jewelry is exactly what I need to focus on in my career.
I started when De Beers was De Beers, and it was basically a cartel, or a monopoly. Is I think they will even admit that now. Definitely had this kind of interesting mystique about it. So to cover them and to try to kind of penetrate this very secretive organization was very interesting. And I would say for most of the 90s, the industry was not very political in an overt way. And then towards 1998 to 2000, conflict diamonds became a very big issue. And there you got involved with, you saw people, U.S. senators involved, Congress people involved, diplomats involved. There was the establishment of the Kimberley process. So when I started, the industry was this very, I would say, isolated world. You had, especially in New York, you had these people on 47th Street, and they played by their own rules. And you also had De Beers, which very famously played by its own rules. And I think one of the things that happened in 2000 with the Kimberley process and the kind of beginning of the end of the classic monopoly structure is you saw the industry start to become part of the wider world and not be as isolated as before. And I think that's been a very interesting process. So I would say, yeah, I would say definitely conflict diamonds and the glimpses of politics it's given me. Not all flattering. A lot has been very unflattering, but the glimpses of international relations it's given me. I dealt with Hollywood when the Blood Diamond movie was coming out. So all that stuff has been very interesting, and you kind of get these little kind of small glimpses into different kind of power structures and the financial power structure and the Washington, D.C. power structure. And to me, it's interesting because again, and right now, the big subject is tariffs, and I'm learning a lot about tariffs, which were not something that we really talked a lot about in the past, and international trade. So it's something where you're always learning, and I think that's great as a reporter. I mean, one of the things that's great about being a reporter is that your job is to learn and then to take that knowledge and to kind of make it digestible to people. But that's one of the things I enjoy to really kind of understand this business. And I've been doing it for a long time, and there's still I still feel that I'm always learning.
I've always thought of jewelry being a very human medium, given that we wear jewelry on the skin. But the whole industry as well says a lot about human nature and the relationships between all of us. And it's quite an interesting story to listen to. I mean, JCK provides coverage of industry news and aims to connect also retailers, manufacturers, designers, and other industry influencers. Could you tell us more about sort of JCK and the ambitions for the platform and all the different elements that are part of this?
I focus on my one part. There's obviously the big JCK show in Las Vegas. It's the biggest show and one of the biggest jewelry shows in the world. I don't have that much to do with that, but that's obviously part of the JCK brand. I would say the JCK platform, I mean, it's been around we had our 150th anniversary a couple years ago. So, I mean, there's not a lot of publications that have been around 150 years, certainly not a lot of trade publications. So, I would say our ambitions for the newsletter and the content aspects that I'm involved in is really to educate people, to help people do business better. We believe in small business. And one of the things I've always liked about this industry is it's very entrepreneurial and there's a lot of small businesses. Now, after I worked for Rappaport, I worked for a year for a toy publication. And the toy industry is very different. It's mostly comprised of a lot of huge conglomerates, unlike the jewelry business. So the fact that I can talk to CEOs of very prominent companies is very nice, and I think that's relatively rare in most industries. So JCK, I think our goals are to help people kind of keep abreast of what's going on, to offer analysis of what's going on, and we do this probably a little less in the past, but offer opinions. We want to make this trade better because we believe that the better this trade is and the more integrity it has and the the more, I mean, some of these words have become overused, but the more responsible it is and the more it cares about, everybody in the value chain, I believe the better off it will be as a business. And so, we also sometimes take a stand as far as, we believe in trying to be make this a more responsible industry, to talk about some of the bad actors that are unfortunately out there, to sometimes take a skeptical look at some of the claims that are made, whether they're environmental claims or other claims, and basically to do what a journalist hopefully should do, which is to bring people facts in a timely and accurate manner, and help them understand the jewelry world.
News stories must be hard to follow in a really global and, like you say, not a few players, many players, quite a complex industry. How do you stay abreast of changes in the field? And perhaps given that my listeners are potentially hoping that sometime they do something that will make it into the news, how do you prefer to receive tips? Or is it even full-blown press releases?
I don't do a lot of fashion and new product stuff. I do sometimes if it's an interesting product or a new kind of technological advance, sometimes I'll write about that. But generally, my beat is on more news. So, I mean, people who want to get coverage of their new line and their new business, they should definitely send an email to me. I'm at rbates@jckonline.com, as well as the editor-in-chief, Victoria Gomelsky, vgomelsky at jckonline.com. And if you look on the site, you can pretty easily see all those, all our names and emails. We're all pretty reachable. We're all on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So that's, I mean, if you want to get in touch with me, and as far as getting press coverage, just reach out to me and reach out to Victoria, and we'll try to get it to the right person. As far as keeping abreast, I mean, it's a lot of just staying aware, and I've fortunately been in the because I've been in the business a while, I know a lot of people, so sometimes people will call me up with tip-offs, which is very nice. They'll say, "Hey, I heard this," and then I have to kind of follow it up and see if it's true. We get a lot of press releases. I'm always looking at Google News and on LinkedIn, and it's basically kind of staying aware of what is a good news story, because it's an interesting thing that people may not be aware of. But when you send out a daily newsletter, one of the things they measure is the open rate. So you want to have a lead story that is interesting to people, right? So that's one of the things we try to do, is to make sure that we have at least one story that we think will get a decent amount of play, though our hope is that people will open the newsletter every day, because I really do think even if the main story isn't to your interest, a lot of times we have interesting stories down below also. So it's really, staying aware, trying to be very fast. One of the things that JCK prides itself on is that we do try to have original reporting. So there's a lot of websites that print press releases, which is fine, and we do that too. I'm not saying we never do that, because we certainly do, but we try to, as they say, add value. So we try to do more original reporting. We try to put more original context in. We try to do more original analysis, to kind of so that you get things that JCK you don't get at any other publication. That's our goal. Another thing that's, I think, relatively unique about JCK is that, I do a lot of the news, but we also have 4 or 5 writers, all women. I'm the only man writing for the publication, and they all have very different voices. I think it gives the publication a little bit of a personality. And I think, especially with the internet, that's very important, that you have more of a kind of direct connection with your readers. We get a lot more feedback than we used to. When I started at National Jeweler, you would put out a news story, and a lot of times it would be like 3 weeks after it happened, and then you wouldn't really hear about it. And now I get feedback all the time, good, positive, negative. I actually enjoy that, and I think that's very helpful to kind of have that direct connection more with your readers. It's basically just trying to understand what they're interested in, what they're concerned about, and we like to have a bit of a mix. And I think this, I don't know if this is true with a lot of the other publications, but I think, I've been doing the newsletter for a long time, and one of the things that I try to do is make it a little bit unpredictable. So you're never 100% sure what we're going to put up there. I mean, usually if there's a news story, obviously the most important news story we'll put up, but we do put up things about celebrities. We do occasionally put up things that are a little bit more lighthearted. Like I remember at the beginning of COVID, people were kind of a little more lighthearted about it, and we put up a story how hand sanitizer affects your jewelry, right? And somebody wrote on LinkedIn, I love the fact that JCK does stories like this. And that really made me feel good because I think that we want to offer something that's, interesting and unique. And the stories have to interest us because if they don't interest us, they're not going to interest our readers. So that's really, it's about keeping it fresh and interesting and novel and surprising, and also unique, offering people reporting and analysis that they can't get at other places.
Yeah, I have to say, I had a little bit of press with my own work recently, and you were one of the only people that reached out to have an interview to talk beyond the press release that was sent out. And I think, we expect that, but we shouldn't take it for granted that that is being done everywhere. So I think it's good to know. But in a world where artificial intelligence holds sort of both positive enhancing processes and negative prospects, the ease of creating fake images and fake news, what do you think the future of news reporting looks like? Will there be increased value in certain media, for example, in-person dissemination of news? What are the limitations platforms such as JCK face? How do we mitigate these kind of challenges?
I don't think anybody really understands where AI is going, including the people involved in it. I think I probably know as much as the next person. I will say, what I mentioned before about having a personality, having a voice, doing original interviews. I think that's all the more important in the time of AI. Obviously, the AI has incredible abilities that are very shocking in a way, and I can't deny that. When you start off in the business, you end up doing a lot of like kind of grunt work, just rewriting press releases and stuff like that, and it's not very interesting, but it's kind of how you learn. And that's the kind of stuff AI can do very well. And I guess what I'm concerned about is that, if people are going to cover this business, and I mean, I really do think there's a value in what we do, and there's a value in having people devote themselves to a subject and to a specific industry. If we're going to be continuing this, I mean, people you can't have AI just doing the easy stuff because it's only once you master the easy stuff that you get to go on to the harder stuff. So I don't like that aspect that AI can just kind of do some of the kind of rewrites of press releases and stuff like that, when I still think it's important that people learn by themselves and not use AI. It also has certain limitations, and I think we've all seen times when it's been extremely wrong. And what's frustrating about it is not just that it's wrong, but that it kind of gives these answers with this kind of incredible like self-assurance or computer assurance that it's 100% right when it isn't. It's really a matter, I think, of people of bringing personality into your work and bringing the human side of the business and of yourself to your work. And I think that's very important in the internet age, with what they call, I mean, I hate this word, but like your personal brand. And I think it's even more important with AI.
Yeah, and I guess it's also down to us viewers to like reward by clicking and reading the things that are written with an intent and with personal and careful reflection rather than just scrolling through news that isn't news. And yeah, we have a choice to make in that area as well. Whilst you don't always have control over what you see, you have control over what you click on and what you do read and spend your time on. So that's, I think, something we can. If our attention goes towards the good news articles, then hopefully we'll continue funding them as well.
Yeah, and I believe that, if you can, one of the things AI probably can't do is it can't necessarily like get a scoop. It doesn't understand like what a scoop is, right? Or what a piece of news. It can't hear something from somebody and then check up on it. So that's, to be able to kind of give original news, I think that's also very important. And it's something that AI, at least for the moment, can't do. I mean, I don't, we have no idea where all this is going to go, and it's certainly frightening in certain ways. And I guess there's probably going to be positives. I'm sure there'll be positives to it also, but it can be definitely a little disconcerting, I think. But I think this is, part of the age we're in, and I mean, we'll talk about lab-grown diamonds in a second. Is that it's a kind of a time of constant disruption. I've been doing the same job for a long time, but it's constantly changing. The expectations are constantly changing. We've had different people run it. So it's basically a matter of always trying to think of, ways to keep with the times and make sure things are still interesting. Like I've been writing about, tariffs for the last month, which is not a subject I'm expert in, but I've certainly learned a lot more about it. So it's it's just a matter of kind of understanding what people want, which again, I think is a little tougher for AI.
Let's jump to this other large topic that's been dominating, particularly our industry, lab-grown diamonds.
Yeah.
They've been on the top of many industry agendas. De Beers launched Lightbox. Now it's closing Lightbox, claiming victory in pushing prices down. The subject has divided opinions and, as some argue, fractured the sort of sector. What are your thoughts on the subject? What have been the things you've been reporting on in light of lab-grown diamonds?
Well, I think Lightbox was a seminal moment as far as, when De Beers got into lab-grown diamonds, it quote unquote legitimized. I mean, it was always a legitimate product, but it quote unquote legitimized the product in the eyes of many. And I think it kind of led to a lot of dynamism in that field. I've always said there's kind of a number of outcomes that people see. First is the kind of the gemstone scenario where the two sectors get bifurcated, and lab-grown gemstones are this kind of low-end item, and natural gemstones are this high-end item, and they're kind of they target a different customer, and I think that's where the industry has been hoping lab-grown would go. It's probably that hasn't completely worked out yet. It's definitely headed there in certain ways, but it isn't. And then you have probably how the lab grown people would like things to work out, which is that similar to the cultured pearl industry, which this is not an exact analogy because from what I understand, it wasn't exactly the same as far as this, but cultured pearls basically took over the market from natural pearls. So that's kind of the second scenario, right? And what you're seeing is kind of a mix of the two scenarios. You're seeing, a definite bifurcation in the market, but you're also seeing lab grown make incredible gains at the expense of natural diamonds, to the extent that it seems clear that the natural diamond market will probably be a little smaller going forward, and you're seeing a lot of mines having issues right now, just this week. So I think, my friend Aidan Golan wrote a piece which I thought was very I thought it was very well put. He said all fears materialized in a way, because it's like the lab grown prices have gone down, the natural diamond business has lost market share, and right now you have very two industries that are hurting, right? I mean, some people are still doing well with natural. Some people are still, especially retailers, still doing well with lab grown. But people are, both industries have big problems right now, and it's very difficult for both of them. So I think we're kind of in a situation where, instead of expanding the pie, which is what people wanted, we've just basically split the existing pie, and there's just not enough pie for both sectors. So I think they're both having big problems. It's obviously a huge disruptor. This was something, I mean, it's interesting because this was something that the industry knew was coming. It was pretty clear this was going to happen. As you mentioned in your intro, I mean, people have been able to grow diamonds for decades. They just haven't been able to do it commercially really until recently. And I think the industry is still figuring out how to handle this. And it's still kind of perplexing people. And it's still not clear for people. And look, I think in the end, competition can either destroy you or make you sharper. For the natural diamond business, it never had a competitor before, right? It used to be, when I like graduated high school, the jeweler would only sell you a diamond engagement ring. That was it. That was the only option. You couldn't even, like, even if you wanted a colored stone engagement ring, they might not even sell it to you. And then, they got things like Hearts on Fire, and that was considered radical, to do a Hearts on Fire diamond engagement ring. So it used to be there was only one choice. And now there's two choices. You can get a natural diamond and you can get a lab-grown diamond. And I think the question right now is that, the natural diamond industry has always been extremely good at marketing itself, but it always marketed diamonds as a generic category. And now it has to switch to natural diamonds as a category. And that's a little different. That's a different sales pitch. They have to say, people love diamonds, they're sparkly, they're nice, but they need to show why a natural diamond is different than a lab-grown diamond, especially since lab-grown diamonds can be good deals. I was just actually at a play my son was in last night, and I was looking over the shoulder. Somebody was looking on Facebook, and she showed this big diamond that she saw, and she said, "Oh, it's lab grown." So it's something that people know about, and I think that the natural diamond industry has to make a case for itself. And I think in the best scenario, it would be something like the Swiss watch industry, which, in and I believe the 80s was very much threatened by quartz and digital watches and things like that. And it neared extinction. It nearly was put out of business. And what they ended up doing was they developed brands, and they talked about the unique aspects of those brands, and they got very much into consumer marketing, and they became a very consumer-oriented business in a way that they never had before. And that's what saved the Swiss watch industry. And now, in a way, it's bigger than it was before, which is amazing. So it had, like natural diamonds, it kind of faced an extinction level event and managed to come out better. But it's still kind of working out its way to handle this. I mean, one of the things I've always noticed is that you could have small, kind of mom and pop lab-grown e-tailers, and they all have PR firms, and they all send out things, and they usually say the same things about lab-grown diamonds, that they're chemically, physically the same. And they talk about the FTC and uh, the supposed eco-friendliness. You have Indian companies that do billions of dollars of business in natural diamonds, and they don't do any marketing whatsoever. So I think it's really time for companies in natural diamonds to start marketing themselves and setting themselves apart. And that's the only way it's going to work. And I mean, people know this and people understand this. But it's going to be a long process, and it's a huge challenge right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
The last diamond you bought, was it lab grown or natural? And the next diamond you buy, will it be lab grown or natural?
So I have never actually bought a diamond. So
Wow.
I guess that answers that. For my wife's engagement ring, we got an inherited diamond.
Oh.
And no offense to my friends in the industry, but I don't see myself buying any diamonds anytime soon. Not that my wife doesn't deserve them, of course, but it's just since I don't have plans for either, I don't. It's hard for me to say. But I think they're obviously they both have a place, and they both can be extremely beautiful, and they both have their own distinct qualities, and that's people get very emotionally staked on this whole lab grown versus natural thing. And I mean, to me, it's like, I understand if you're like somebody in Botswana and, natural diamonds are really kind of life and death for them. I understand them getting very emotional about it. But, I mean, in the end, they're just products. And the idea that, people get so heated about commercial products is I just don't understand it. I mean, I think you can get heated about the effect it has on the world, but I think lab-grown diamonds, I mean, I think so far we haven't really seen any major benefits as far as them. And we've obviously seen issues with in Botswana and Canada and stuff like that. So I think they both have pluses and negatives, and it's just all about every person's individual taste. And I think it's very hard to beat the price issue, right? I think that's the oldest sales tactic in the world is we're selling the same thing but cheaper. And it can be very hard to get around that. And I think that's the kind of challenge that the natural diamond industry faces. And but I mean, and, the other thing is like people look at lab. I understand people like they're interested in lab grown diamonds. They think it's a cool technology, but they're not like a marginalized group. They're not like you shouldn't have to protect them. There's nothing, they're products, right? And they're produced by people with, in a lot of cases, a lot of money. So I don't, when people get so heated about the debate, it's I'm starting, it feels weird to me. And I think definitely social media makes it so much worse because I think if this happened 15 years ago, we wouldn't have the kind of divisiveness on this issue that we have. But, somebody can write a thing that natural diamonds are terrible or lab-grown diamonds are terrible, and it gets a lot of play on social media because it's something that gets attention and gets people heated. And I think it's unfortunate. I think it makes things perhaps worse. And look, I don't think either sector is going anywhere, so they're going to have to figure out a way to live together and to kind of coexist. I mean, they do coexist now, but they're going to have to coexist in perhaps a way that's kind of allows them both to be prosperous rather than right now where neither one is all that prosperous. So.
You may not have many diamonds in your near vicinity, but diamonds do feature in your mystery novels, published by Camel Press. Could you tell us a little bit more about your passion for writing novels and perhaps how it supplements your career as a writer of factual pieces for JCK?
I've always had a creative outlet in addition to my normal job. Like I was in a I did sketch comedy for a while. I've done stand-up comedy for a while. I've done uh, other kinds of writing. So at one point, we used to have a gentleman who worked at JCK who wrote mystery novels. And the last one he wrote was involved diamonds, and I helped him out with it. And I'm actually a character in the book. And it kind of gave me the idea, well, why don't, I know all this stuff about the diamond industry. Why don't I write a mystery novel? And it kind of germinated for a while. And then at one point, a friend of mine has an editor, and I met with him, and he said it was a good idea. So I just started writing it. And I came up with a bunch of characters. One of the things the editor told me was to make the main character a female, which was not something I probably would have thought of off the top of my head. And just to, just to kind of write something that's fun, but talks about some of the issues in the industry and gives, maybe perhaps a more accurate take on certain aspects of the industry. I think there's always been a lot of mystery and, people think that all diamond dealers are a certain way. And, my experience has been there. It's just like any other business, and I've worked in the book business and publishing and stuff like that. And they're all businesses, and you have good people and bad people. So my idea was, just to do something that was fun. And I started writing it, and I was relatively pleased with what I was writing, and I enjoyed it, and I just kept doing it. And I've now the fourth novel, which is called Making Killing in Diamonds, which will be published in August, and it's actually on lab-grown diamonds, and it will probably be the last one I'm going to write. I mean, it's been a lot of work as far as um, writing for JCK and being a father, and also writing these books. So that's been a lot of work. So for the last couple of months, I haven't really done anything book related, and it's been very very freeing in a way. So it's given me a lot more spare time. So that's I just wanted to produce fun novels. I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if I could perhaps reach a audience outside of the kind of standard trade audience that I usually talk to. And of course, as it turns out, most of the people who buy the books probably are in the trade. But I wanted to kind of explore some of the things that I explore in my work life in a more fictional, fun way, and see how that works. And if you want more information on them, it's robbatesauthor.com, and you can see all the Amazon links and the Goodreads links and all that stuff. Um, but I think I'm mostly fulfilled the goals that I set out to do as far as, making something that was fun and interesting and action-packed. And I hope most people agree. I think it's 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 a huge project and to write that kind of book in ways that is not always may not always be obvious, but um, I think it's helped me with my day job in a lot of ways, just because I end up researching a lot of things for the books that I end up sometimes using for JCK. So um, we'll see. It's possible I may do some others, or may do some others on a different topic, or stuff like that. Right now, I'm just taking a break. I will say it has not been a bestseller, but it's done okay, and the publisher has been very happy with it, and that's really, all you can hope for. I think they're nice, fun books that hopefully are thought-provoking. They got me to think about a lot of different things about the industry. It's been interesting in that way.
Well, in fiction, we often find ourselves in other worlds. How about joining me in the sort of future, a little bit of science fiction? As an avid documenter of what's going on in the industry, what do you think the future of the field looks like? What are key changes that you can see on the horizon?
That's a great question, which I really don't have an answer to. I think it's going to be. I was talking to somebody, and she had been around, kind of as long as I have, and she's like, "Look, we've all been through at this point like five or six crises in the industry. And at the end of the day, the industry usually makes it out okay, but it becomes a little different and it changes. So I think it's definitely going to be very different than it is right now. I hope it will be more consumer oriented. I hope it will be more socially responsible. Obviously, there's been a lot of motion on that front over the last couple of years. I hope that continues. I hope that we really consider the effects that our products have on human beings and people. And, one of the things we always talk about is storytelling in the industry. And I think this industry has some great stories, and you can never have too many. And I think we need to have a lot more good stories and perhaps a few less unpleasant ones. But I think I'm hoping this becomes a better industry because I think right now I mean, we're going through a kind of a weird period right now, but the general trend has been towards more transparency and people knowing more about the products that they buy. And I believe that will continue to some extent. I believe that, people that companies are under a microscope in a way that they haven't been in the past, and they have to live up to that. And it's not easy and it's not always fair, but I think it's to be the best company that you can be and to have a positive social impact. I think it's very it's a noble goal, and I think this industry in particular, because it produces a product that nobody needs, right? You can't eat jewelry, right? And it's not really a necessity. I mean, people look at computers as a necessity. I know that they're not a necessity since I've certainly lived part of my life without computers, but uh, you know, you don't need jewelry. And I think to get people to buy jewelry and to understand why it's valuable and to understand the worth and the beauty of it and the mystique of it, I think, you really have to get out there and let people know and talk about it in a way that perhaps we haven't been doing in the past. So I think that's going to be big. I think, look, it's definitely going to be a different industry. De Beers is up for sale. We don't know what's going to happen with that. We still don't know exactly where, as far as lab grown versus natural, where that's going to land. So there's a lot of questions that and uncertainties that perhaps they weren't in the past. But this industry's been through so much. It's been through so many difficult times. But I think one of the things that keeps it going is the fact that it is a very entrepreneurial industry, and it is an industry where people can make their names very quickly if they hustle and they really establish themselves. So there's not really many industries like that. You can't just like make your own car or whatever. There's not many industries where, people can just kind of come out of nowhere and create a big brand. And you think, I mean, probably one of the biggest brands in jewelry history, at least in modern jewelry history, is Pandora, and it's only 20 years old. So I believe there's a lot of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of, smart people figuring out how to grab them and how to do business, and to kind of take what's best of the old and to embrace what's good with the new and kind of create that and meld that to something that's new and different but special, and also honors this industry's history.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on thinking about jewelry as being necessary. I always say to my students, jewelry is the oldest art form. We were making and stringing shells on something to carry along before we were painting on caves. That comes from a very big desire to sort of show who we are and present our identity. And I think that doesn't mean that
Mhm.
diamonds are the sort of necessity, but jewelry, I think, is very much connected to us being human and showcasing our identity. So I'll disagree with you on that one. I hope that we'll see a sort of future where things are moving in the right direction and brands are becoming conscious of what their impact is, and that we're open to new things, as well as sort of celebrating some of the beautiful traditions we have. Was very nicely put.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I think one of the things we're seeing with Instagram is that, a jewelry designer can reach out kind of in a direct way, much like the way I, as a jewelry writer, can kind of reach out to my readership in a way that I couldn't before. You have jewelry designers who can kind of use their personality and their ability to tell a story and their craftsmanship and put a personality to a brand in a way that perhaps wasn't possible or accessible to everybody in the past. Yeah, I obviously jewelry isn't going away and it has a long, long history. So hopefully we'll all be here for a long time to come.
As a news director, my last question for you, what are your future ambitions for whatever it is that you're working on, be that news or the podcast? What can we look forward to seeing maybe in the near future? Is there anything that you're working on that you're happy to share that we could look forward to? What's up next for you?
Well, I want to keep the JCK newsletter strong, and I believe that it does offer a service, and I'd like to do investigative stuff. I'm interested in doing a little bit more of that. I'm interested in doing more analysis. As I said, I have to promote the fourth book, but I'm kind of holding off writing a fifth one for the time being. It's robbatesauthor.com, and you can read all about the books. There's four books. It's a series, but they all kind of function as standalones. And check it out, and let me know if you enjoy them. I hope you enjoy them. But yeah, I think just you know, making sure that it's keeping myself interested and making sure that the readers are interested and making sure that we offer a valuable product that people get something out of. And for that, feedback matters a lot, and that we take it all very seriously. So, and I think that's it really. Just I think the podcast is something it's relatively new. I mean, it's been actually 5 years, so I guess it's not really new anymore. But we've had some great guests on the podcast. We just had the new CEO of Signet, and we've had the new CEO of De Beers, and we try to get good people and have some great conversations. So, you know, doing, now they're talking about video podcasts. So everything kind of changes. But basically, I think the goal is the same, is basically to inform readers and to make sure that people get value out of what we offer. And one of the things, you don't want to be obsessed with clicks, but you can definitely see what people are interested in. And sometimes it's very surprising to us what people are interested in. So, um, in that way,
No?
it's just making sure that we play a role in keeping the trade healthy and safe. We write a lot about security and making sure it prospers and making sure it's ethical and making sure it continues into the future and is as good as it can be because it has potential. Consider myself in a way a servant that I work for the industry. So um, I'm always interested in feedback, and I really appreciate everybody's time and attention. It's I know everybody's attention is fractured in this environment, so anything that people give is really appreciated.
Thanks to the information society we live in, and because of the tireless efforts of those who work to keep us updated, we can hold a finger to the pulse of the jewelry industry. Front row seats to the debates about the authenticity of materials, the impact of the newest technologies, and the fluctuations in various markets are keeping us in the loop on the latest developments and often make compelling reading. For working hard on challenging the content of news, but also questioning the format with which it's being delivered, and for speaking with me today. I would like to thank you very much, Rob. It was really a pleasure to hear more about your career and your work.
I'd like to thank you for having me.
Next month, I'll be joined by another guest, so watch this space to find out who it is. But for now, this was Sophie Boons for the BAJ podcast episode titled Diamond Stories with Rob Bates. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.